Hello everyone, I am Grandmaster Renato Quintiliano, and this is our series Study the Classics. Today, we will analyze a game by the 9th world champion Tigran Petrosian, who was a very strong player in positional chess, was a master of positional chess, prophylaxis, and closed positions. Petrosian became famous by his very solid style. He was a very difficult player to beat, although he also made many draws, but he was a very tough player, very difficult player to defeat. And he was the first player to defeat Botvinnik in a World Championship match. So I like very much this game against the German Grandmaster Unzicker, Wolfgang Unzicker. So let's see, because it's a very nice strategic model of positional play and how to build a plan. So Petrosian opened with d4, knight f6, knight f3, e6, bishop g5. He had the story attack in his repertoire, but after d5, c4, we are in positions of the queen's gambit declined. So c6, queen c2, bishop e7, e3, castles, knight c3, h6, and here Petrosian retreated to f4. Then instead of, bishop e4 is also a natural retreat, but bishop f4 is very interesting because this bishop is also well placed in this diagonal, and maybe later he can play h3. But okay, after knight b7, he played c takes d5. Here we are in a more or less familiar path of the exchange variation in the queen's gambit declined. Again, I should note that Petrosian waited by knight b7 before taking on d5, because now this bishop is not coming so easily into play. So c takes d5, and here Unzicker reacted with c takes d5, taking with the c pawn. This recapture is positionally wrong, but it's important to know how to exploit this mistake by black. And this game is very instructive to understand how to play in this structure. E takes d5 is much more natural, and it's the right move as well. But c takes d5, black has an idea. First, he wants to keep a symmetric structure, like in an Slav exchange variation. But he also has, he's preparing to play on the light squares. So Petrosian played bishop d3, a6, castles, and here b5. So this is not a good continuation. Maybe b6 was less committal than the move played in the game. Again, with the same idea, intending to play bishop b7, but I think b5 was... Unzicker probably considered this move more ambitious, more principled than b6, because after bishop b7, black is preparing to play knight b6, rook c8, and he can play exploiting squares like c4 and the e4 or even b4. So if he is able to mobilize his pieces quickly with these moves, bishop b7, knight b6, rook c8, then black's position should be okay, and perhaps even better, because he will have some good prospects of active play with his pieces using the light squares. Unfortunately for black, white has a very effective way of exploiting this structure in his favor before black is able to get all his pieces into play to finish the development in this active way. So this is the first instructive moment when you can pause the video and try to find Petrosian's next move. Well, I like this game because it became a model of play as white for me in these kind of positions, because I'm a d4 player, so I have always enjoyed to study some of Petrosian's games in d4 openings. So the point here of b5 being a bit premature is that white can play a4. This move is very strong and forces black to make concessions on the queen side because he's not able to keep the pawn on b5. So this will inevitably forces black to create new weaknesses on the queen side. So in the game he played b4, but b takes a4 was probably even worse because of knight takes a4, and it's very easy to mobilize white's forces here. For example, bishop b7, rook fc1, and when rook c8 there is bishop c7, very strong move. Queen e8, queen b3, and here black is already facing material losses because he cannot defend everything, b7 and a6. So he plays b4, but now it's very important to know how to retreat this knight and where this knight should go. Petrosian plays knight a2. The idea is that he wants to play now knight c1 and knight b3. So this is the correct plan against this structure. You play a4, forces black to advance the pawn, and now the knight heads to b3. Because on b3, this knight will be very solid. It cannot be attacked by black's pawns, by any piece of black almost, and it keeps a very nice blockade on the queen side, watching squares like c5 and also pressing the a5 square. So this is very good. He could also play with knight e2, knight c1, knight b3, but I think Petrosian preferred this route by a2, c1, b3 to keep the e2 square available for the queen, and also instead of knight b1 because he wanted the rooks connected. So knight e8 was played. Unzicker plays this move looking for some exchanges, preparing some exchanges, and here knight c1. When white plays this move, he is kind of threatening a5, because this would be also an unpleasant move for black, because the pawns on a6 and b4 would be kind of isolated and easy to attack. So black plays a5, but now knight b3. This is the setup aimed by white. This knight is very well placed here, blocking the pawns and also watching the weak c5 square, and also pressing the a5 pawn, which is a weak pawn. So this knight does a really great job here. Black took the chance of exchanging the black bad bishop, the light squared bishop, but that is not exactly solving black's problems, because now he has also weaknesses on the light squares. So it's very easy how white consolidated a nice positional advantage here. So Petrosian played the bishop takes a6, rook takes, queen d3, rook a7, rook fc1, and now knight d6. This is another important moment, because this knight is heading to c4. Black intends to play knight c4 and try to block the c file. In view of that positional threat, strategic threat, Petrosian plays bishop takes d6, which is also a very good moment to exchange the bishop. I have explained that in a previous game, Smyslov carries, but this exchange is very nice because the knights will be more useful in this fixed structure, because the knights have some very strong squares and solid posts like c5, e5, and b3 as the knights here. On the other hand, after bishop takes d6, this bishop is not really effective, because on the queen side it's neutralized by his own pawns, and on the king side it's neutralized by white's structure. So this bishop is kind of useless here. And now Petrosian plays rook c6. He starts to improve his position, winning tempo, knight b8, and here queen rook c2. The rook goes back, keeping the c1 square available for the other rook, for another rook. So knight d7, rook a c1. Well, white was able to double on the c file. So besides keeping some pressure on a5 and also keeping an eye on weak squares like b5, he also has doubled rooks on the c file, which is the only open file over the board. So this is of course nice for white. The game will continue with knight b6, queen b5, knight c4, but now, I mean, the plan of bringing the f6 knight to c4 didn't work because of bishop takes d6. So Unzicker decided to maneuver the other knight to c4. If he has one more tempo, he can play queen a8 and the rook b8, trying to trap this queen. By this reason, Petrosian plays knight fd2, another very precise move. Because after knight takes, queen a8, rook dc2. Well, the c file is on is under white's control, and there is no way for black to block this file. So here we can clearly see that by controlling the c file, white has a more pleasant position. White's pieces have more freedom and more mobility, and also keep some pressure on the queen side. So at the first sight, it looks like the plan should be somehow to break frog on the queen side and capitalize white's advantage, converting to a material advantage and winning some endgame. So the game can be surprising. Rook d8, rook c6, now g6. Both sides keep making some simple and useful moves. So g3, king g7, king f1, king g8, h4, h5. But here comes our second instructive moment, because now Petrosian conceived a very, very deep plan and also a very strong plan. So I suggest you to pause the video here again and try to find white's plan. How is the best way of exploiting white's advantage? Well, the first time I saw this game, it was a teacher who showed it to me, and I was around, I don't know, a level of 2000 player. And I remember he showed me this position and he said, okay, think in what is the best plan for white. And I was mostly considering things like rook b6, trying to double on the 6th rank, knight c5, trying to invade on the queen side. And when he showed Petrosian's idea to me, I was just shocked but also amazing by the concept. Because now Petrosian plays rook 1 to c2, and his idea is to maneuver the king from g1 to b1 to the other side, to the queen side. The point is that he understood here that by controlling the c file, white enjoys a lot more freedom and more mobility to his pieces. That means it's easier to transfer white's pieces from one side to another compared to black's pieces. White's pieces are more quickly transferred than black's pieces between the flanks, between the two sides. So he sees that the correct plan is not crashing frog on the queen side, because by now black has all his pieces directed to control important squares on the queen side. So by now black is able to defend the sensible squares on the queen side. So an open battle on the queen side would not be so easy for white, because black has a lot of defenders there. Instead, on the king side, this king is alone, and as we will see, it's easier to transfer white's forces to the attack than to maneuver black's pieces to the defense. And another small detail, but another very important detail actually, is that black cannot make the same plan here of maneuvering the king to the queen side because of the open file. On the other hand, these rooks, they serve as a shield for the white king, because the king can walk behind the rooks and find a very safe place on b1 and a2, or a2. So he basically will maneuver this king to the queen side and will break frog on the other side. Of course, I think at this point of king h7, king e1, his plan became a bit obvious for black. But as we will see, black can try to defend in the best way possible, and still this plan is very strong. So king g8, king d1, black just waits because there's nothing better to do. King h7, king c1, king g8, king b1, king h7, and now queen e2. Queen b7, I mean, as the queen has left b5, he is preparing to bring this queen back to the other side if necessary. So rook c1, king g7. And now Petrosian comes back to b5. This is kind of a game of cat and mouse. He goes to one side and then come back comes back to the other side, to the other flank, because that basically this is kind of psychological trick, giving black the chance of exchanging queens. But actually, after exchanging queens, black loses even faster. A takes b5, and if a4, b6, rook a d7, knight a5, and white simply coming very quickly with the passed pawn. For example, rook a8, there is a tactical refutation. Rook takes d6, rook takes b7, rook b8, rook c8, rook d8 takes, knight c6. And white will win a piece. Of course, Petrosian was very good at calculation and he saw this idea. But by that reason, black was forced to go back with the queen, but here, f4. So he starts to improve his position on the other side, and it's relevant that black cannot do the same, because if f5, now the e6 pawn is also weak. So the simplest path to the win here is rook b6 followed by rook c2 c6. With the pawn on f7, black would have bishop c7 here, but now it's not the case anymore. So he plays king h7, queen e2, and the queen goes back to b7, but now Petrosian finally breaks on the king side. g4, h takes, queen takes g4, the queen comes back. At this point, it seems that black is able to defend the position because the queen is also coming. But as we will see, the main point is that white is able to coordinate, to alternate threats on both flanks. So he plays h5, queen f6, and here Petrosian was very famous for his subtle prophylactic feeling. So he was always aware of ideas and threats for his opponents, and he was a master on avoiding them in a much anticipated way before they become really dangerous. So here he plays king a2, very precise move, because in case of h takes g6, queen takes is check. So black exchanges queens. So he plays king a2, king g7, and now comes h takes g6, queen takes, queen h4, attacking the rook, bishop e7, and queen f2. So now he's threatening rook g1, winning on the spot. And here we can see that that it's much easier for white to combine threats on both flanks. King f8, knight d2, maybe threatening to bring this knight to the other side, then rook b7 and knight b3. Again, Petrosian, there's no rush to Petrosian. He goes and goes back, he goes forward and goes back, renews the threats, and also keeps the control in the position. This is also, it's very sad for black to defend a position like this, because white can decide in which moment he goes for direct action, for concrete action. So rook a7, and now he plays queen h2, renewing the threat of rook g1. And also from this point, the queen is better placed because it's also looking to the queen side. So at the same time, the queen creates threats on both flanks. Here bishop f6 was played, and now that black is trying his best to defend on the king side, he plays rook c8. He goes to the other side. So, well, that's the main point of keeping the control. Why keeping the control over the c file was so good for white, because it gives more mobility. So the queen was kind of stuck on a8. When Petrosian went back with the queen to e2 to play g4, the black queen spent some tempos, but managed to reach g6. But now he attacks on the other flank, on the queen side. He changes his main attack, and it's not possible for black to go back with this queen, because now the bishop is on the way of the queen. On the other hand, the white queen is totally ready to join the attack, because white only needs to play f5 and the queen will be ready to attack on the other side. So rook d7 was played, but for example, if rook takes c8, rook takes king e7, now the simplest is f5, and this queen can jump to the queen side. Queen takes, queen b8, and black is defenseless. Rook d7, rook e8 is mate. So he played the rook d7, Unzicker played the rook d7, but now comes knight c5. Finally, this knight gives the decisive blow. So if rook takes c8, knight d7, king e7, rook c8, and if rook d6, again there is f5 and the queen is attacking d6. So it's very nice that this queen is watching to both flanks. So black tried the desperate b3 check, but king takes, and when rook d6, f5, rook b6 check, king a2, but black is facing huge material losses because the queen is attacked and also knight d7 is coming. So this is a very, very nice game by Petrosian, very instructive in many moments. I really like the way he built his plan in this game, and it's very instructive to know how to handle that structure after c takes d5. But I think the most important thing that we can learn from this game is how to think on a long plan, a plan that has many steps, and how to get the most of your pieces, the most activity, find the best square for your pieces, the importance of looking to both flanks, trying to play on both flanks, and combine threats in opposite sides, especially when you have space advantage and you control the only open file of the board, which was the case here. Well, I hope you have enjoyed the analysis of this game, and thanks for watching. See you in the next video.